Okay, well, a somber Monday here, talking about college football. Depending on which teams you root for, man, you had a great weekend. Really, overall, college football continues to be the gift that just keeps on giving, and this season continues to be the season that just keeps on giving. As always, I'm joined by PG and Drew England is with us this evening. Guys, I want to give you all an opportunity to introduce yourselves, let everybody know where they can find all of your great content. Drew, I'll start with you and then go to PG. Tell the people where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah, just like you guys, we're on YouTube, but it's the Under Official Review podcast. The link, actually, our Twitter handle is in my description here, my display username here. But Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. We usually do one or two episodes a week. We'll do a recap, just like we're going to do tonight with Ty, and then we'll do a preview show of all the games going into the weekend. So we like to have fun. Me and my buddy Zach Merrill. We cover college football from coast to coast. So yeah, happy to be on again with you and PG.
Yeah, y'all can find me on YouTube, Google, Apple, or Spotify, just the PG Show, all one word. Or you guys can find me at the PG Show _. We put out a lot of great content, talk about OU and all things college football. So come hop in, and we'd love to have you.
Yeah, great content, both of y'all. Thank you for being here this evening. And there is a lot for us to talk about. I know the new playoff rankings don't come out until tomorrow, but I think inevitably that's a great place for us to start. Whenever we're looking at these rankings, guys, I don't think this one is that difficult. I'm going to be very honest with you. I think number one, personally, it's got to be Georgia. What they did to Tennessee, what they've continued to do all season. I know they've had some close games here and there. They've had some times where for 3 quarters we can point to, and maybe it hasn't looked the prettiest, but at the same time, they continue to win, and they just beat the number one football team in the nation. At number two, I have Ohio State. Ohio State, offensively, they are as good as anybody in the nation. Defensively, that Jim Knowles defense continues to grow, and I'm really intrigued to see them take on Michigan. That's going to be a massive game. At number three, I have Michigan. And at number four, I have TCU. I think that is probably going to be exactly what we see come tomorrow. Drew, I want to hear from you. What do you think about my top four? How is your top four? What's your reaction to the weekend, really?
I was a little bit shocked at how dominant. Well, not shocked, but I was a really bit surprised at how Georgia was able to just completely dominate that game from the opening jump. I didn't get to watch a ton of it live, but I went back and watched quite a bit of it after our game and everything like that. But yeah, just Tennessee, especially their defensive line was unmatched. I mean, Georgia just ran the football down their throat. Their offense just couldn't really get anything clicking. Hendon Hooker struggled a little bit. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Georgia is the number one team in the country, no doubt about it. Ohio State, surprising there with only a 21-7 win against Northwestern, but still at the end of the day, you got the 0 in the loss column. So you're continuing that track, and they're going to have some big games ahead that's going to solidify or push them out of the top four. But yeah, I'd have no objections with Ohio State, and then with Clemson's loss, that was, I think, a surprise at how well they just didn't play. But yeah, I'm pretty good with what you say. Michigan and TCU. TCU continues to play good football, and until they get a loss, I think you have to at least respect what they're doing. So yeah, I don't have a problem. I think at the end of the day, it's all going to shake itself out. And I agree. Georgia right now is the hands down favorite, number one team in the country.
Hard to deny it. PG, what are you thinking about that top four? What would your top four be?
Yeah, so I agree with your top four in terms of just a week by week AP ranking. When I do my playoff rankings every week, how I look at it as if the playoffs were to start this week, who would I put in the playoffs? And actually, I would take Michigan out of it, and I would put Oregon in that slot. I'd like to see an Oregon versus Georgia rematch at a 1-4. And I know by the end of the season, Georgia and Ohio State have to play each other, and one of those two teams ain't going to be in it. And I think Ohio State's going to come out victorious in that, where at the beginning of the season I didn't think it, but now I do. And I think it's going to be Georgia, Ohio State. TCU and potentially Oregon in that final spot. So I don't think USC gets in this year. It'll have to be a next year thing for them.
Yeah, the Pac-12 is interesting because there is a really linear path for the Pac-12 to get into the college football playoff, something we're going to have to talk about a little bit later. Mark Ramon in here saying Texas on their way to a top 3 class. Yeah, y'all recruited very well. Going to be interesting. We got recruiting talk on the way. Hank saying, what's up, guys? We about to talk about offensive coordinators that wait too long to actually feed the running back the ball. We have a lot of talk about offensive coordinators coming up. Yeah, you bet. Just a dude says hook 'em. We getting Vasic and Hill. Yeah, look, the Hill one's going to be a really interesting battle to watch. Every institution in the nation is going to be after him. He is stellar to watch. Hummus, thank you for joining in. He says Texas getting some major recruits. They're in the battles, man. They are absolutely in the battles, making moves. They have a recruiting class, though, that some of the personalities on that class are infectious and have done a lot to be proactive to continue recruiting other people. And we're going to talk about that. But first, we need to talk about some of the games that happened this weekend, guys. I want to vent a little bit here. We'll start with Alabama, LSU. And PG, I have to give you your roses, man. On Friday, whenever we do our preview streams, I was forthright. And I even have a video on it, still up. Definitely not, you can go see it. I broke down the game, and I didn't like LSU's chances against Alabama. I didn't like how they matched up against Alabama. And inevitably, I was wrong, right? Alabama continues to confuse me. Several different reasons. We can talk about the offensive coordinator. We can talk about the defensive coordinator. And from an offensive coordinator perspective, in my video I did right after the game, I rewatched all these games, 6:30 in the morning, flipped on the camera, and just started rambling into it. It looks like I put a blindfold on the offensive coordinator, spun him around, handed him a dart, and just told him to throw it at the board. And whatever he hit, that's what we're going with. Doesn't matter what happened to play before. It doesn't matter what's coming next. And it sure doesn't matter what the defense is lined up in. Bryce Young continues to run for his life. He had an off week. He wasn't able to practice. That was super unfortunate. The whole game, though, was just off. Alabama continues to be one of the most undisciplined teams in the nation. And you know the saddest part, guys? I've talked about this at length. If someone shows you who they are, believe them. And I was sitting here and I would defend Alabama every week saying, oh, but guys, hold on. They'd go 15 penalties one week, and then the next week they'd have 5 penalties and start looking like the team that was building towards the Alabama we all expected. So they were inconsistent. But far too many times they showed time and time and time again, Alabama's inconsistent, they're not disciplined, and that's who they are. This is telling. I think Alabama is going to have a lot of movement in the coaching department. I have no inside information there. That's just my opinion. But from an offensive coordinator perspective, I don't think it's any secret. I have questioned Bill O'Brien for quite some time. From a defensive coordinator perspective, guys, we didn't have a spy on one of the most effective rushing quarterbacks in the nation in crunch time. We were in overtime. LSU lines up for 2. Brian Kelly actually calls a timeout. Saves Alabama because we had 12 people on the field. You want to know what happened? They came out that timeout, and Alabama still had 12 people on the field. I've rarely seen a Nick Saban coach team this discombobulated, and I don't think Saban is exempt from blame. I think obviously he even talked about it. Some of that is shouldered on him. He took responsibility. He's not one to shy away. But we really need to have a conversation about the coaching staff at Alabama. And I'm not saying the players were perfect. Don't get it misunderstood. But it's up to the coaching staff to put players in positions to be successful, not for players to continuously trying to fight to put themselves in those positions. And that's what we see week after week after week, is the players having to be the own agent of their fate. And that's the coach's job. And I think, Drew, one of the things I talked about earlier this year is when Alabama played Texas, it became so telling to me. Watching Steve Sarkisian call plays with a young quarterback and then watching Alabama call plays. I'm not sitting here saying Bill O'Brien is an awful offensive coordinator. Please do not get it misunderstood. My contention is he makes it far more difficult than it needs to be. You watch Steve Sarkisian, and sometimes he'll say, hey, I'm going to limit it. I'm going to bring you along, and I'm going to have you in rhythm so that in the third quarter, you're humming. We're stacking successful plays. That's just not what I see from Alabama. Drew, I want to hear from you. If I don't get off this topic, I will continue to rant for days. I want to get some outside opinions on this. What was your thought watching that game?
I mean, I was in the same boat with you on Friday when we did the show, and thinking that with this LSU team, you really don't know what you're going to get, but at the same time, you really had to ask the question about Alabama. But Alabama has always been the team that they get that one loss and then boom, they suddenly it's figured out. Oh, sorry, we stubbed our toe, but we're going to go ahead and finish strong the rest of the season, and dominate. This year has been anything but that. It has been, it's almost kind of been like scratching your head at, all right, where can we really pinpoint the frustration? Where can we put the onus, if you will? Does it fall on Bill O'Brien? Does it fall on Pete Golding? Does it fall on, the discipline, whatever it is? And like you just said, I think ultimately it falls back on Nick Saban because he has been the guy in charge. And, why hasn't Alabama been able to figure out their struggles? And that's a question that I've asked and talked to friends like that. And I really honestly don't have a very educated answer on this one. You got Bryce Young, who's a really good quarterback. You don't have those, big threat type wide receivers that you've had in the past. You do have a really good running game. Defensively, there's a lot of struggles over there. So I can't really sit here and say, oh, well, it's one thing here. And if they figured this one thing out, they're going to be really good. But right now it's very uncharacteristic of Alabama and what they're doing. They're they go down and seemingly they don't look prepared. Like you said, coming out of huddles right after a timeout with 12 guys on the field, that doesn't happen, and the last time that, and seemingly Alabama's could be staring at a 3-loss season for the first time since I think 2010 maybe or something like that. And it's crazy to think about the success that they've had. But here's what I know about college football, and it's an ebb and flow. And I think fan bases, the sooner you figure it out, the better it is. All these teams, and I'm not saying Alabama is getting ready to climb or descend from the mountain at a rapid pace, but you can only enjoy so much success for so much time. There comes a time where, things happen, other teams climb that mountain and they get to, enjoy the view. And I don't know if this is the end of the dynasty. I don't know, but it begs the question, what is really going on with Alabama's program right now? So,
yeah, PG, what you thinking?
Yeah, man, it's kind of like what I told you on Friday. Harold Perkins Jr. is legit. He's real, and he proved it in this game. He was all over the place on a national stage as a true freshman, like making his appearance known. And he didn't, I don't want to say he's giving me Will Anderson Jr. vibes, but he's kind of giving me something like that where he's going to be a superstar on the defense for LSU over the next 3 years or the next 2 years, however long. He's probably 2 years. He's probably not going to stay 4 years at LSU. But throughout the whole game, he's applying pressure to Bryce Young, making him get the ball out quickly and making him make throws that he doesn't want to make. And I listen, Brian Kelly, I don't know what all of the criticism that LSU fans have had on him at the beginning of the season for his funky dancing and bad accent is, but listen, you got to admit, the man can get it done. We sent it in our group chat, but that man has some kahunas to be able to go in there in overtime and throw a 2-point conversion on a Nick Saban defense.
No doubt.
But I think that just shows you, though, and I talked about it before, how far we've came away from the Nick Saban that you fear and love. Now I think it's became a Nick Saban that we love, but don't necessarily fear. Over the past couple of years, over last year, we saw 2 coordinators beat him for the first time ever. He's never had a coordinator beat him before that. And, it just seems like the team is slowly starting to get away from the, like you've said, the disciplined Alabama teams that we're used to seeing, the Alabama teams that, they stand on the sideline and watch USC come out like, their dogs or something, rattle in a cage, and then come out there and beat them, 55-7 or whatever that score was. That thought will never leave my mind. But it does seem like we are exiting an era where Alabama and Nick Saban have just been completely dominant. I mean, how many national championships have they won over the past 10 years? Or, well, I guess 10 is a bad example. 5 years? Have they won just one? One?
All of them.
They haven't won 5 years. Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing is, it not necessarily that Alabama is going to not win as many games. They're still going to be a top tier team in the SEC every single year. But the opportunities for Alabama to go out there and win national championships, I think, are coming to a slim end, especially with the NIL era, everybody getting better talent around them, the SEC getting more competitive. People, I think, are starting to catch up to Nick Saban. And maybe Nick Saban's starting to slow down. You talked about it. Maybe Nick Saban is starting to think about outside of coaching ventures.
Well, let me have some counterpoints because I think Hank puts it very well. The drop pretty much well coincides with the O'Brien offense. Another thing I'll say is one of the things we need to remember is that we're seeing a drop-off after Alabama put more wide receiver talent in the NFL than any institution had ever done in the first round alone in a small sample size. So I think it's logical that there was some drop-off, but that's no excuse for the things we have seen, the penalties, right? It's one thing to have players that are inexperienced that need to come along. It's another thing to be that undisciplined. Defensively, I think there's a lot of things going here. There are certainly things that need to change. You've heard a lot of questions about Pete Golding for quite some time. Now, just this year, it looked like things were starting to quell, but inevitably we get in this game and we don't have a spy on Jaden Daniels, right? So, well, PG, I hear you that things are, kind of lining up. I don't know that's indicative of Nick Saban not being someone we fear right now, or just I don't know why in the world Pete Golding didn't put a spy on Jaden Daniels. I mean, you look at that defense, you have linebackers that can run sideline to sideline. Jalen Moody kept missing tackles, but it's just some of these decisions. I would be very surprised if we didn't have a lot of coaches have serious conversations at the end of this year. But there's another thing I will point out. I'm not saying that I think Alabama is going to win the national championship next year. That's not my contention. I just have to see them, quote unquote, fall off. You get my point here? Like, I have to see it to believe it. I'm never going to believe that because you don't win a national championship and then maybe the next year you don't win it, you're done, right? Like we've seen teams be able to go through ebbs and flows. They still recruit at the highest level of college football. They just brought in the number 2 recruiting class. They have the number 1 recruiting class right now, 5-star quarterback in 2024. So it's going to be interesting to see. I did want to get to some of the comments, though, because Jimmy asked, is this Saban's last year? I doubt it, because whenever you hear people talk about Nick Saban, they say he is just as locked in as ever. It's just kind of some of the outside things. Hummus says college football nerds were live after the game saying Jaden Daniels is a better quarterback than Bryce. I'm not sure I'm buying all that. If they were genuinely live saying Jaden Daniels is a better quarterback than Bryce, I'm not saying someone's football card needs to be taken, but we might have to start having some conversations.
No, I'll say it. Take their football credentials.
Yeah, that's a pretty wild.
Jaden Daniels would have a Heisman Trophy, I think, if he was better than Bryce Young. So
yeah, he's a great quarterback. Y'all know how PG, Chris, y'all have been with me. Y'all know how long I've been talking about Jaden Daniels. You know how much I root for the kid, but Bryce is special, man. Chris, before we move on to talk about OU, I did want to quickly get your kind of 2 cents on the Alabama game versus LSU and kind of where you see Alabama going right now.
Man, it was mostly just game problems in my opinion. I think that you guys did everything possible that you could have won the game on the field, but again, come down to it, there's really no help. You can see, it's obvious everything that you said, Ty. He's on an island out there basically calling the plays and running that offense. Bryce Young is responsible for a lot of things.
So much. It does make sense to me.
Yeah,
Not
and
that
if
he
you
can't do it. It's just, why would you ask your quarterback
Yeah.
to do that if he doesn't have time because of the offensive? I'm going to get going.
And it's like you need to actually kind of take those reins over, in my opinion, if you're Bob, right? Because how should I say this? You guys just talked about it. Your wide receiver core is not mediocre. They're high star guys. We know that these guys are coming off of prolific high school careers, productive high school careers. They're coming in here with a lot of hype and all the rest of that around them, but we haven't seen them like kind of be brought along with that regard this year, right? It's, hey, you guys know the offense, go run it, right? Defensively, it's just some of the same plays. Like they're scheming. Because one of the things that we come on here and say when Alabama loses or when Alabama plays poorly, we're not talking enough about the fact that a lot of these teams are taking Will Anderson out of the equation.
Yeah, true.
They're putting the onus on a lot of other teams. So I mean, it's not rocket science what they're doing. So you have to scheme better for that. But down the stretch, LSU just had an answer, and it's just one of those days, man, at the park. And let's be real. To beat Alabama this year, both teams that have beaten Alabama, it took their quarterbacks and some of their other star players to have the games of their lives. I mean, to play out of their freaking mind. I mean, Jaden Daniels, let's be real, he hasn't looked that great at LSU this entire year. They have a 6-2 record, 7-2, whatever they are right now. They have the record simply because the schedule permits, and they've been able to play very well during these parts. But they haven't. I mean, let's be real. Some of the competition they face, although it is the SEC, I don't feel like it's just, oh my gosh, just coming out. You know, some of the wins, if you look at their wins, who they're against, you're like, okay, yeah, I see that. But with that being said, it just down the stretch, they just called a better game, and they just had an answer.
No doubt.
And you think that Alabama will pick up on that when they're motioning their tight end or whoever the hell that guy was that caught that game-winning catch. You think that they would have somebody motioning out there, but it's like there's just a disconnect. So I don't necessarily know if that's with the players or is that mostly on the coaches or the scheme. I think, who was it who said that up here in the comments? Somebody said it in the comments where it's like ultimately that falls on your head coach.
Yep, Hummus right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Great point.
I mean, it's just one of those things. I'm not saying it's on Saban. I believe in what Saban is doing, but I think that there's some type of disconnect, and obviously with Pete Golding, because Pete Golding, let's be real, Ty, just tell us, has he called a complete game this year?
Complete. I mean, he's called some games that, they're good, but complete. That's tough for me to say because, Chris, here's my biggest thing. You had a great point, and it gets to a comment. Hamilton says Will Anderson has been silent, and Hamilton, he has some good stats. Like if we're looking and we took away the name Will Anderson, we'd be like, oh, that guy's having a nice year. But because it's Will Anderson, they are doing a lot to eliminate him from the play. My question is if teams are giving that many resources to eliminate Will Anderson, Dallas Turner is no scrub. Jaheim Otis is no scrub. Henry To'oTo'o, why is no one getting free? Oh, here we go. Thank you, Jonathan.
I'm only going to be on here for a couple minutes, but I have to say a couple of things. I've defended Bill O'Brien. I've defended Pete Golden. I've defended Nick Saban. I've defended the players. To hell with Pete Golden. I'm over it. To hell with Pete Golden. I'm over it. And I'll be honest with you. I just want to say this real quick. I don't know if you guys can hear me if I'm cutting in and out or not. When have we ever seen Nick Saban defend a player for making turnovers like he has for Bryce Young? Is he going soft?
I think he just realizes what Bryce has to work against with Bill O'Brien, personally.
I get that, but he defends him at every chance he has. Going into halftime, dude, you cannot tell me that was one of the dumbest throws you've ever seen him throw in the end zone. A no-look pass.
No, it wasn't good, but Jonathan, one of the things we have to understand, what makes Bryce Young is his ability to do plays like that. How many times have we seen Bryce make that same throw and it panned out? No, I'm not defending the throw. Bad throw, shouldn't have happened. But I think Nick Saban is defending him because he realizes we have an offensive coordinator that's calling fades and go routes on a 1st and goal. It makes no sense.
No, but that's what I'm getting at is, and hopefully I'm not breaking up, and if I am, I'm going to be breaking up here in a minute.
Like, it's his job, if he's not doing his job, to replace the man and get somebody that's capable of doing the job. So, because he has to live with the decision. He hired him, and he's kept him around.
True.
That's just my opinion.
No, I completely agree with that. And that's why I say I can't say Saban is exempt, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with him.
No.
And I'm certainly sure that if he was here right now, he'd be the first to tell you, yeah, no, part of the blame lies on me. He wouldn't shy away from that. He said as much as in his interview. It's just, it's Jay Sast, is this Bama OU safe space edition, man? Bring on A&M. We can have a safe space for everybody. Tennessee, A&M, bring them all on in here, and we'll all have a little seance in here together, because it's been rough for us all. But yeah, Jonathan, it's one of those things, man. This team is so talented, and I look at the talent on this team, and it's just perplexing. I right before you got in here, I was telling these guys, actually right before we went live, I was telling them I had two of my friends over watching the game. One of them, actually both of them, played college football. Both of them looked at me during the course of that game and said, Bama's play calling makes no sense. Like, on a defensive and offensive perspective, it makes absolutely no sense. So it's not just fans saying this. Like, you have former players on Twitter.
Yeah, it's almost but I will say this, though, at the same time, as Alabama fans, we have been spoiled by winning 11, 12, 13 games a season. And you're not going to win them every year, and I understand that, because I remember the 2010 season when we got blown out by South Carolina and Alshon Jeffrey and Steven Garcia.
True.
But we made adjustments when we had that season. That's the big thing, is the adjustments were made. Because at the end of the day, too, like, you know, every assistant, every coordinator Saban brings in, they usually get hired as a head coach. They don't stick around for very long. Well, these two have stuck around for quite a while. There's got to be a reason for it. So,
yeah, I don't know. Perplexes me, man.
And where's the respect for TCU, by the way?
Well, I don't know if you saw when we opened this up, when I said, you know, college football playoff rankings, they come out tomorrow. I put TCU in the college football playoffs right now. If they happen tomorrow, they're in. They have been fantastic. Now, AJ in here says he's a Miami fan and that he's 100% sure he's suffering more than anyone in here. And you know what, AJ? You're 100% right. You absolutely win that competition. No argument from me. Wow. That has been, something. Double digits, maybe a pipe dream.
A&M lost Anthony Hill today, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. Anthony Hill today, and that gets us on to talk about some Texas A&M, because, guys, Texas A&M not only had the loss of Anthony Hill today, they not only have had the losing streak, but they lost to Florida this weekend. Now, I don't think anybody's surprised about the Florida loss, given the state of Texas A&M. They had the flu week, all of that. Boom, right? But at a certain point, nothing's going right for them, right? And so we can say, oh, well, the flu is a reason they lost to Florida, but it's always something this season with Texas A&M. It's always something. And now we see one of their 5 stars decommitting. Now, guys, A&M came out of nowhere last year to secure the #1 recruiting class, not only in last year, but in all-time rankings-wise. Where do we see them finishing? Because they only have 11 prospects. Chris, I want to hear from you, because we have some people in the chat talking about Anthony Hill, saying that his top 2 whenever he announced were Texas and Texas A&M. They think, what are you thinking about Anthony Hill? You think he could go to Texas?
In my opinion, I'll be honest with you, from everybody I talked about, and shout out to my uncle for this one right here, it's about the money. So, I mean, I don't know what other school he would possibly go to. I don't think that Georgia, Bama makes the most sense, in my opinion. You're seeing what they're doing with Will Anderson and how they can be so multiple with him. I think Texas, even though they have Gary Patterson, you still got to ask, how long is he going to be there? I mean, he's going to be a high commodity, highly coveted this summer. It's going to be hard for him to turn money down. His PK really built up to what we all think he is, right? You know, we saw last year, we see this year. I mean, I think Texas is the odds-on favorite for the kid. I mean, if it's a business decision as far as longevity, I think that he would choose a different school. I mean, there's plenty of other schools he could choose from. Kid's number one linebacker in the nation. I mean, he can choose wherever he wants to go. But from just an NIL standpoint and just what Texas has to offer him in that avenue and in that area, and just allowing him to stay home as well, not playing too far from home in Austin, away from Denton. I mean, I think he's fine there, right? So I mean, I think that's the obvious pick.
Frightening. I will say this: if Ford had all the resources dedicated to stopping him, he wouldn't have the numbers Anderson has. We have to also be cognizant their whole game plan is on one guy. Yeah. They do everything to stop that man. Not to knock Ford, but even then, there's a little bit of nuance within that statement that we have to understand. But here's my thing: I think he goes Texas. They have an immediate need at the position. He knows he can come in there and start. He is that dude. And they have good defensive coaches there. I know PK's a little bit of a question mark. Look what he did at Washington. Great stuff there. And then they have Gary Patterson. It's no secret how highly I think of Gary Patterson. I've said it before. I will say it again. Dude is a defensive alchemist. He revolutionized the 4-2-5 nickel defense within college football. Anywhere he is, they have got a shot at any defensive prospect. I think he's that good. I have that much respect for him. Drew, what are you thinking?
I think I'm with you and Chris. I think right now, just seeing where his recruitment had lined up in the past and everything like that, I think Texas certainly has to be the front runner based on everything. But you never know with these kids, it could flip and he could decide, somewhere else. But for him and proximity to home and everything like that, Texas looks like to be the first right now. So.
Yeah, PG, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I've actually talked to somebody from the Denton Ryan area that plays with him, and they're saying that Texas sounds like it's it, but don't be shocked if he's looking at other places like LSU, which he's actually talked about being really impressive after this past weekend. And, if it comes down to the NIL conversation, I would think Miami would be a huge player in that.
Yeah, and Miami would be good. Nick says TCU is trash. They played nobody. I don't want to hear it. Nick, who would your top 4 be? I don't know who you would have in over TCU.
Damn sure ain't Tennessee, huh? PG.
What'd you say?
Say damn sure ain't Tennessee, huh?
No. But, to keep on the Anthony Hill thing, in my gut, I think he really does end up at Texas. It seems like the most likely destination. But would it shock me if he ends up at LSU or Miami? Absolutely not.
Yeah. I want to get to some comments. Ammonia, I don't certainly not hear nobody laughed. We'd always talked about Georgia being a force. I never picked early who would win just because I like to see things play out, but we always knew they'd be a force. And one thing that's interesting is Kirby does do a lot of ingrown stuff, like homegrown. He doesn't do a lot of transfer portal, but remember, last season, y'all got a huge addition in the transfer portal from West Virginia, I'm not mistaken, at the safety position, because your safety position was fairly decimated. I got a few guys there, plus the quarterback situation. Now, they didn't pan out because the safety position had the injury, but yeah, it's what y'all have done this season has been very, very, very impressive. One thing I also saw I wanted to get to. Weinman says Anderson was just neutralized by freshman tackles from LSU. He was chipped by guards, tight ends, running backs all evening. It was very rarely a one-on-one situation. And if it was a one-on-one situation, the play was going the opposite way. So, yeah, it's just great game plan by LSU, though. Make no mistake. They had the correct game plan, and they did it better than Alabama's game plan. All hats off to LSU. Brando says Pete Golding gives me Alex Grinch vibes. In a way.
The lack of pressure is scary for what we have on our front 7.
Kirby says, no, this panel is cool and logical. Yeah, we Weinman, don't say you're bad. You're good, man. We're talking football. All football talk here. Nothing to feel bad about. It's all part of it. Said, yeah, we all questioned it, man. Y'all lost how much talent? What was it? 16 guys went on to the next level from Georgia. Something just dumb.
Yeah.
What y'all have done is unbelievable. Now, we're talking recruiting, and there's another game that has major recruiting implications here, or not a game, but a team that a lot is being talked about. And we have 3 Oklahoma fans with us here this evening, guys. Colton Vasek is all in the headlines right now. This has been an ongoing conversation. What are y'all thinking here? Nick put in his top: Georgia, Ohio State, Vols, Michigan. You're a huge Vols fan. I can't put the Vols in over TCU. Not right now.
No,
Not right now.
No.
Not right now.
I
All
think
right,
the
guys, we're gonna
Balls
get
are
off
out
here.
of it because they're probably not going to
Jonathan, thank you for joining in tonight, man.
You guys have fun, man.
Hey,
Vols
y'all go
are
check out College Football Jonathan Lewis. Great content, always great stuff. Glad he could hop on here. Go ahead, PG.
No, I'm just going to say the Vols are probably out of it. They really don't have a shot to go avenge a loss to Georgia, and I don't see Georgia losing for them to get into the SEC championship game. So, realistically, Vols are probably out of the playoff conversation.
Yeah, frightening. You know what I think of Bo Davis. We've had this conversation in comments. I think so highly of Bo Davis. But let's get to some Oklahoma talk. Chris, I want to start with you. You came in last. Talk to me about, first and foremost, well, I'll let you choose whether you want to talk about Oklahoma and Baylor first or the Vasek situation first, but just talk to us about your opinion on everything.
Man, I'll talk to you about OU, and I'll let these gentlemen over here talk about the Vasek thing for sure. My whole thing with OU this weekend was just it was inconsistent football, and you cost yourself that game multiple times. Three areas that poked out to me was one, the tip balls. Obviously, the interceptions. One of them was definitely on Gabriel. If he stays in the pocket, if he stays calm, we have a wide receiver running right over the middle that's wide open. The plays are working. But if you go back to the video that I think I did a video with Jay and PG, and we talked about it. Look, coming into this game right here, this is not a game where Levy could be finesse. This is going to tell us a lot about Levy, not going forward, but just about Levy this season, in my opinion. You can't go out there running bubble screens. You can't go out there trying to run some of these finesse type or formations, in my opinion. On fourth downs or whatnot, you're kind of like, what is the play calling? Why are we running this with Majors? Why are we not running these wildcat plays with Gray? Is Gray hurt? What's going on? Why are we not getting this same production out of our wide receivers? It's like we're not looking for those guys. Some of the plays or whatnot, you're just like, gosh, what's going on? And that all falls back on Levy, to be quite frank with you. Defensively, you saw some of the things that crept up during that 3-game slide. You saw guys overplaying gaps, overrunning gaps, choosing the wrong gap. You saw from your linebackers. You were able to get somewhat of a pass rush, but you were never really able to get any hurries or at least make shape and feel uncomfortable back there. You got caught up in the pre-snap motion stuff again. And I mean, I think Eichert and Lehman released a video, and in there they said, you regresses. And that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like all the momentum that you had and that you were, okay, let's change this narrative about us slowly but surely by the time the season is over. And you still can. But when you're making those same mistakes that we've seen time and time again from even game 1 of the season, let's just be honest. I mean, it's baffling at times how good this defense can be whenever everything is working, but then just the inconsistency, it outweighs all the good that they do. For everything good that this defense can do, they take 10 steps back whenever they go out there and they have drives, especially like that last one. I mean, you have them on 4th and 7. Nobody for these past 2 seasons, and nobody has been scared of us on third and longs or 4th downs. It's almost like it's a gimme for them. Our linebackers, I really like Agwebu. I really like Danny Stutzman. Something's not clicking there because we cannot cover the middle on those cover 3s. Our cover 3 defense is terrible. And at the end of the day, we're running simple zone concepts. We're running basics. I don't really know what to tell you. I feel like what it is it's a combination of 2 things. And I've been telling a lot of people this today. For the first time, I've actually come to a realization that this is true. we have three things on this team. We have one, a bunch of players who have bought in. I don't question whether they bought in or whether they fully committed to the system or what BV is trying to implement here. But we have some guys who have been here for a long haul, and it just hasn't worked out. It just has not panned out, and it looks like it's not going to pan out. Some of those guys will be gone during on graduation. Some of those guys will probably just hit the portal, right? And then three, guys like Stutzman, guys like Ethan Downs, guys like Reggie Grimes, right? This is their first year that they've actually been that guy as far as being a starter. So they're playing a lot of starters rep. And I know it's mid-season, 5-4, 9 games in, you feel like they should have been and hit that curve by now, but it's like they haven't. You see the talent, you see the potential, just the production, the payoff, you're not getting any of that. So when you put that together, combined with the losses that we had, obviously, I mean, I like Dylan Gabriel, I really do. But Caleb Williams is at USC. You see one of our wide receivers is up there too. I feel like that's not a total miss. Him with Williams or Hazelwood, I'm fine with our receiving core. Jalil Farouk is a guy, right? He's a dude.
Yeah, y'all got receiver talent.
But when you just look at what we lost in the draft and all the rest of that, you're just like, man, there's some major production that we're missing. So look, I'm not going to mail it in on the season. I'm gonna say it now. I said 9-3. I'm gonna say 8-4. So my whole thing is I'm gonna trust the process. I'm gonna trust in the coaches and what they're preaching. And then also one more point, and then I'll pass the mic. First year that they've been with Smitty as well. In the trenches, we're not where we need to be in the trenches. We're big, we're athletic, we're fast, but we're just not where we need to be in the trenches yet on that defensive line, in my opinion. I feel like another summer, another good, solid summer not with Levy, but with Smitty, getting some of these other guys in, some of these freshmen that we're going to get as well, like PJ. I feel like it'll pay dividends, but we're just going to have to sit back and wait and trust the process and just hope that at some point this team, whether it be the coaches one game or it's the players, will get out of our own way and be able to win. That Baylor game, we probably should have won by at least 2 touchdowns, just to be quite frank with you. We were able to move the ball on that defense. We were able to get key stops in certain situations, but we set them up in great field position on some of the interceptions, and then we just could not stop their run game. To give up 200 yards on a run, which this team has honestly been really good against the run through this whole year. But to do that against Baylor and that type of situation right there is just to take all the momentum that you had coming from the Kansas game, coming from the who did they play? Like Iowa State game. It's like you took 10 steps forward and then took 10 steps back.
Yeah, PG, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's been extremely disappointing to watch Oklahoma this year, quite frankly. It's almost like you see them come out one game and they look really good and you feel like they put in a lot of effort. And then it's like they come out the next game and then they just feel like they're better than everybody else and they don't try as hard. It goes from one extreme to the next. And that's almost what it feels like. Now, I don't know if that's true. And I like a lot of the guys on this team. I've talked to a lot of them, but I feel kind of the same way with Chris. There's a culture problem here. You have a bunch of Lincoln Riley guys that are still here that really haven't panned out with Oklahoma. And quite frankly, I think they're bringing those bad habits from the Lincoln Riley era over into this team. And I don't know what the answer is because, again, these are really great guys and we're not going to go name dropping them, but it's almost like when things start not to go their way, you see their body language almost like give up on the sidelines. And I don't know how to fix that. And I don't know what the answer is. And I want to say OU is going to come out and win the next 3 games because, quite frankly, they're more talented than all 3 of those teams, and they should come out and win those games, especially if Spencer Sanders is not playing against Bedlam. But I don't know if I can call OU to win all 3 of those games. I don't know if I can do it because I've seen them week in and week out just be way too inconsistent. And quite frankly, I'm to the point of where next year, I just want to see true freshmen start. And I know I have been a huge proponent of do not start true freshmen if you don't have to. A lot of these guys just are not ready. But listen, at some point or another, you've got to be able to get your guys in there and get your culture started and get the bad culture out, right? If that means sitting them and playing somebody else above them, that's what it's come to, because that's what we're looking at. And I'm glad we're getting this out of the way right now, because I saw somebody post on Twitter earlier today, and they were like, how is Brian Kelly at LSU? And there were a couple other programs that they posted, doing so well, but then Brent Venables is doing so poor. It's the culture. We were already trending this direction anyways.
Ooh, PG, I don't think y'all want to compare the culture you guys inherited to what Brian Kelly inherited.
No.
That is not a comparison that goes in y'all's favor at all.
I'll say this.
He had his girlfriends and their kids disrupting practice. Did Lincoln Riley have that? Because I've never heard
but Lincoln Riley had his own set of problems.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like a book, man. Like LSU, what they had going is like something that'll be in a book.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Brian Kelly's doing better. And I think probably with less talent. Like, I think OU's probably a more talented.
I don't know about that.
I think
Ogeron has some classes. Ogeron has some.
When he says better, I think he means relative to where they were when Ogeron was let go. Yeah. Right? Like it's already improving. That's what I think he means. Yeah.
But I mean, I listened to Teddy and Gabe's show this morning, and they said it perfectly. Over the past couple of years, you've seen OU progressively get worse and worse. And then last year, they're pretty much playing the same way they were playing last year. You're just not able to win those games.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how the season should have went last year. And we all should have been fired up about this last year. But instead, we were kind of winning games, so OU fans still felt great about themselves. And here we are.
So I gotta, Nick, I don't mean to pick on you, but we're gonna do a quick game real quick. So right now, Nick, TCU has no losses. Tennessee has one. If TCU wins the conference championship, they'll remain undefeated. Tennessee will remain with one loss, no conference championship. How will Tennessee get in over TCU at that point? Because you told me earlier that Tennessee controls their own destiny, but inevitably, by the very definition of controlling your own destiny, that means you don't rely on other teams to lose. Tennessee is reliant on TCU losing. They're reliant on actually a few teams dropping the ball so that they can comfortably get in. You want Oregon to not win their Pac-12 championship, because if Oregon wins out, they as well have one loss to Georgia, just like Tennessee. But, they also own a conference championship. So I hear you. Look,
well, and then you have also either one loss Ohio State or one loss Michigan team that has a very good case there as well, versus Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't know. I would take a one-loss Tennessee over a one.
Yeah, but you've still got.
I would take a one-loss.
Cases.
Yeah, I would take a one-loss Tennessee over a one-loss Michigan for sure. But the
they're
point being
still
made is like, yes, there's a lot. Look, Nick, I think you're conflating me saying this with saying Tennessee isn't one of the best teams in the nation. They absolutely are. Y'all were fantastic. Hendon Hooker was phenomenal, and Josh Heupel should be in contention for Coach of the Year. I mean, he has done that well of a job, genuinely. And look, I'm not saying that you don't have a chance. You certainly have a chance, and y'all are a great team, but you are going to rely on some people losing. Now, we have some people, since we're talking about some Big 12 action. Working Man says LSU is done. Bama is done. You're right. And PG, to your point, you remember last week you asked me if Bama were to lose against LSU, if something was to happen, a bunch of teams were to lose, does Bama deserve to be in the playoffs? My answer remains no.
Yeah, but they got a 17% chance still somehow.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous.
That to me.
Yeah, I disagree completely. I disagree completely with that. And I mean, but that's my take on this is they played themselves out of the playoffs. Other teams have played themselves in. It's the beauty of college football, man. You can't have two losses. You can have one. And that's why, Nick, I think that's why we've had a back and forth, Nick. If I didn't think there was something to your argument, I wouldn't have even addressed the comment. But there is something to it. You're right. Tennessee has a chance. No doubt about that. No doubt about that at all. But, Weinman, I agree. And I'm an Alabama fan. I disagree with that. I disagree with that completely. They have played themselves out of the playoffs, and that's how it should be. But we have some people asking about TCU, Texas. I mean, that's going to be a game. Now, guys, we typically preview on Friday, but I think we do a quick breakdown right now. Maybe we'll say it's 50 minutes. We've been live right now at 55 minutes. We'll call this topic good. So my quick 2 cents on this. Look, TCU has been tough to stop. I like Texas's talent. When you look at the pieces they have offensively, how could you not like Texas's talent? Here's my biggest question for the Texas Longhorns. There's been one continuous thing: bite Sark in the butt everywhere he's been. He is a brilliant play caller, brilliant offensive mind. He scripts games better than almost anybody in college football. You watch his opening 15 plays, it is clinical, week in, week out. Can he adjust in the second half? What do we know about Tennessee? They have faced some tough games. Nick, you pointed it out, my man. You talked about how they've played games and played them very tough. They played Oklahoma State very tough. They've had some close moments, but Nick, you know what that does tell me? And you know what Texas fans like frightening, you know what that does tell me that I worry for Texas about? They're battle tested. They've been in those moments and they came out on the other side. Texas has not. Now, that doesn't mean they won't, but statistically speaking, if they get behind, it's not going to be good in the second half. I think this is going to be a fantastic game. I'm going to pass it off right now.
For this game, it's going to come down to how consistent can Quinn Ewers be, as opposed to where he was earlier in the season. Granted, he get hurt, things like that. But I don't know if Texas's defense is ready for TCU, and can they slow down that dual threat of Max Duggan and play against some big receivers. And then obviously the running game, because you've got 1,000-yard back already there at TCU. And I mean, it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be, I think it could potentially be like the old Big 12 shootouts of the past, stuff like that. But it being at home, it's certainly going to help Texas and their chances. But I don't know if they can slow down that attack that TCU has brought to just about every defense they played this year. So.
Yeah, Chris, what you thinking?
I'm gonna be honest with you. Obviously, I'm not a fan of either team, but what I will say is this right here. I'll go with Texas in this game. I'm just gonna be totally frank with y'all, and I know some people are gonna give me a lot of crap for this. Look, I know they smoked us this year. TCU is a fraud. I'm sorry. I don't believe in Max Duggan. I've seen Max Duggan for the better part of 4.5 years. I know exactly what he's going to do in games like this. I don't think he's going to have a huge game. I look for Overshawn to really assert his dominance in this game. I say dominance. I really look for him to just be assertive in this game. I look for them to have a really good game plan to really stop what Raleigh wants to do offensively, which is attack you over the middle and kind of get you to fall asleep on some of those jet sweeps and different things. If Justin's not playing this game, I'm not sure if he's back, if he's healthy, whatever the case may be. But if he's limited or if he's not playing, then that's a big part of it as well. I think where the key to this game, honestly, is can Texas is two things. Okay. Not necessarily worried about Quinn Ewers. I think he can still have an okay game and they can still win. They can escape. Is the game at TCU or is it at Texas?
At Texas.
Oh, God. Anyways, so I think that he could play okay and they'll be fine. But I think where the game is going to be won at is two places. Can you stop the run game of TCU? Okay. Can you make them just a passing team? Make Max Duggan prove that he can throw it 40 times to win a game. All right. So if you can control their run game and turn them into a passing team, I think they start to get predictable. Okay. We already know that Lincoln Riley's offense is explosive and his brother is running the same offense. Let's just be real, with different variants. Right. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that it can get predictable. And guess what? You got a guy who's had some success against Lincoln Riley over there as your special analyst, assistant, whatever you want to call him. I call him your defensive coordinator. But at the same time, I would say that's the first key to the game. And the second key is what Ty just said. Second half, does Texas crumble or does Texas stay consistent? you have to lean towards crumbling because hell, they almost gave a game up against K-State. If they don't turn the ball over, then I mean that's probably an L because they were moving the ball down the field.
Well, and they also struggled against Iowa State as well too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So at home. So the whole thing is that you have to, if you're Texas, you want to win convincingly, obviously. But this game right here, as fast as they like to go with TCU and that offense or whatnot, at least for this year, probably want to win ugly. So turn this into a time of possession game. Run some tempo. Run some, some drives. Let those be lax and just work. I mean, hell, you have Bijan, you got Roshan, so you can always work the field. Work the field. Make them stay on the field. Make them be honest. Turn this into a time of possession battle. And you'll probably end up winning by a touchdown and a field goal or maybe even 2 touchdowns. But I'm just not a believer in TCU. Look, I get it. They beat us. I know. Boomer Sooner still. But at the same time, I'm still not convinced about this TCU team. I've seen them go up there against West Virginia, who is not a great team, not a good team at all. I've seen them again last week. To be honest with you, Texas Tech is probably a few plays away from actually taking over that game. It's the same thing. But yeah, I'll go with Texas this week. Still horns down, but I'll go with Texas in this game.
For me, it's the flip side. I want Texas to prove that they can go out and win a big game, and I haven't seen it yet. So
yeah, this is going to be, guys, I mean, it's easy to say now, genuinely, this is going to be, if we had to label games as a can't miss game, this would be in the category of can't miss game this weekend. It is that good, not because of the implications. That alone makes it a can't miss game. Remove the implications. Let's talk matchups. You have Gary Patterson going up against TCU. First and foremost, what more do you want? Yeah. What more do you want? Gary Patterson is to TCU football what Philly cheesesteaks are to Philadelphia. I mean, it's synonymous, right? He is a big part of that program. He's now at Texas. That means something. That absolutely means something, and he's a brilliant defensive mind. Brilliant. But the fears I have about Texas, the fears Drew voiced about Texas, they're valid. They're 100% valid. Can they overcome that? Because I like Texas's pieces as well as anybody. Just a dude, you said keep feeding Bijan and Rojo and they win. Look, the Texas Longhorns have an argument that you can see Texas fans come up to you and say, we have the best running back room in the nation. You might not agree with them, but when you really start thinking about it, you're like, well, yeah, that statement, that's not crazy whatsoever. That's logical. Like, yeah, that y'all have
talent has never been the question at Texas.
Never. And Nino Sports Corner has got a phenomenal video breaking down the inadequacies of Texas offensive line recruiting that really points to a lot of the struggles they've had over the year. Guys, if you haven't seen that, Nino does fantastic content, top tier stuff. Fanatic Perspective, Lando, Texas Homer, all great content, all friends of the show. Go check it out. But they'll be the first to tell you they've recruited to a type, but not for cohesiveness, right? It's going to be very interesting to say. I Am1 says, can y'all talk a bit about Georgia? Look, I Am1, we absolutely can. Unfortunately, my friend, I think it's going to be a short conversation. Y'all have been sensational.
Yep. Point
blank, period. Guys, it's one thing when I tell you Georgia has a top 10 defense. I think everybody expects that on a year in, year out basis at this point with Kirby Smart because of what he's been able to build. Would it shock you if I said they had a top 10 offense as well? With Stetson Bennett?
Well, it was a point that you made on Friday as well during the preview. So, yeah, it was interesting to find out that little nugget, you know.
And Stetson Bennett is not turning the ball over.
Nope.
He's not making bad decisions. He's making good decisions. Good decisions.
He's been that Bama quarterback up until Tua that has managed the game really well and has leaned on their defense and has done a good job with just keeping the game moving right along. And he's taking care of the football. We've already seen him win, a big game last year. So you can't question Stetson Bennett's, leadership as a quarterback anymore, really.
No, not at all. And then you get to their tight end room. Whenever we're talking college football, guys, I had a long conversation this weekend with Denzel Johnson. Some of you were on whenever he came on the show, former Big 12 first team safety with TCU under Gary Patterson. My friend PJ, my old roommate who played cornerback for UTSA, we were talking this weekend about the role of the tight end in the modern offense in college football and how unstoppable it truly is. I mean, you have defenses scratching their head as to how to mitigate these tight ends. Now imagine you have Brock Bowers, you have Washington, you have Delp, you have that tight end room. That's a lot of firepower, and it's just a mismatch. The way Georgia utilizes their tight end room is almost an extension of the run game, to where they're getting these mismatches to keep drives going. It is a thing of beauty. Genuinely, Monken has done a great job with that Georgia offense. Hats off to him. Georgia has built something truly, truly impressive. White, you've asked this a few times. I've been meaning to get to it, so I want to talk about this right now. And then, Nick, I do want to get to your point as well, because I think that's an interesting debate. So I want to get to that as well. I do love that question Nick asked as well. But White asked, will Brent Venables get Oklahoma back to prominence? Right now, White, I think I'm going to still lean with yes. Here's the reason why. Oklahoma has an understanding of who Brent Venables is. Brent Venables has an understanding of who Oklahoma is. You look at who Brent Venables has been under, and they've all been successful guys. Now, I got a little bit of pushback from my friend right below me, who's far better dressed than I am this offseason, about as great as a hire as I thought Brent Venables was, and as high as I remain on Brent Venables, I did ask this question, and because Chris is an attorney, I always use this example. Chris, you can be the best litigator in the nation. That does not mean that day one you are going to be the best law firm partner in the nation. It is two totally different jobs. That's what we're seeing. So does that make me think he can't do it? No, I don't think that, because I haven't seen a program completely collapse. We have to also acknowledge what he inherited. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong, 44% roster turnover. Is that number correct? Maybe off by 1 or 2%, but you get the general point I'm trying to make here. He had a lot of turnover. He came into a situation where the recruiting class was falling apart, and he assembled a top 10 class in transfer portal acquisitions and in recruiting. That's very, very, very impressive. And for my Texas fans in here, you'll have heard me say this before, because I said the same thing with Steve Sarkisian. Guys, we cannot give a head coach a really due and fair analysis off of just 1 year. Just 1 year. Brando says Thrasher is so 2012 type. Man, that's just personal. Let me have my shirt, Brando. Jeez, that just hurts. My goodness gracious. But I wanted to pass it to y'all, because I think it's far too early to be worried about that question in particular. I absolutely think you go into this. Brent Venables is the guy. He understands the culture. The culture understands him. I think it all makes sense. Way too early. I said the same thing for Steve Sarkisian last year, and Frightening will know he and I were fighting with people in comment sections saying, hey, you cannot judge him off of 1 year. You got to give him 4 years and see what he does then. Then we'll have that conversation. Drew, I want to pass it to you now. Same question.
It's really hard for me to really give a good answer, because I'm so close to a lot of people in that program. But
Fair.
I think right now he is a great fit. He is what we needed after the collapse, after the Muleshoe departure and everything like that. Is he is and kudos, and I can't say this enough to Coach Stoops and for what he did for us, and to keep that mojo and to keep that train moving after things went up in smoke, and I don't think Coach Stoops gets a lot of credit, and I still give him a lot of credit. I know we do, but I don't think people from the outside looking in understood just what a hell of a job he did to come in there and say, you know what, I'll do whatever it takes. I love this place to bridge the gap to getting us our head coach. And when it was Brent Venables came in understanding what it meant to coach at Oklahoma, not being a head coach, but understood the expectations it took to come in and set a good foundation. So right now, me being a high school football coach, I understand the how coaching works, how guys think and everything like that. But it takes time. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. And a lot of these programs you're looking at and you're comparing, Brent Venables to Brian Kelly and to, all these other things. You can't. You have to look at each program as they are and what each program is going through, because nobody had the turnover that I don't think that Oklahoma had. 60% of our roster was new to Oklahoma, whether it been freshmen, whether it been transfer portal guys, whether it been first-year guys that haven't really played in a vital role. And so you're going to have growing pains, and I know a lot of people were high and had 11-1 expectations, 10-2 expectations. And, I got a lot of pushback at the beginning of the year saying, hey, guys, don't be surprised if it's a bumpy road this year. Now, what it looked like to me, I didn't know. I wasn't ready to make a prediction saying 8-4, 9-3, whatever it was. I knew we were going to have some growing pains. You're going to go through that sometimes. It's part of college football. But for me, right now, yes, BV is the right guy for the job. He understands, what it takes. He's going to roll up his sleeves. That staff knows what they're doing. They can recruit. We're going to be fine. It's going to take us a few years, and better now than 3 years down the road when we're going right into the SEC and looking this thing really head on and being it even more of a mess. So right now I'm confident. I'm going to be patient, just like some of my friends have been. And, we kind of, it's hard because we've enjoyed so much success over the last, however many years. And so for me, I'm not ready to throw up my hands and say, like some are out there saying, he needs to be fired, whatever this is, that's insanity. But, long story short, right now he is that guy for us. So.
Yeah. Chris, what are you thinking?
Definitely think that he's the right guy for us, man. I think BV is going to, I really do believe he's going to get number 8. I do. I believe that he's going to bring in the players that fit his system, that fit the culture that he's trying to build here, and he's going to get it. I believe in the coaching staff as well. I do say this right here. Maybe Ted Roof is something that you look at this offseason or whatever the case may be, but you got to figure out somewhere to what's not working on his defense. Are we not teaching somebody something right? What's going on? I mean, there's some things that need to be done, but at the same time, I believe in what he's building, what he's trying to do here. And like I said, when it works, it works. I mean, Ty, you said this about the defense that he had, that he had at Clemson, hell, even back in his old days at OU. Venables will put you in the right position to make a play on the ball. That's what this defense is built for. His defense is going to give you a lot of looks. You're going to have to be ready yourself pre-snap. Just because you're running a lot of motion and a lot of different things, you're going to have to figure out what the hell are they doing, right? But the whole thing is that when this defense works, it works. Even when they're running base things and they get interceptions, they make plays on the ball, run support is good, the gap schemes are good. Whenever they're consistently fundamental is when this team is at the best defensively. So I believe that we're trending in the right direction. We saw some things this year that we haven't seen in quite a while, even in the Raleigh era. I mean, just to be quite frank with you, some of the losses we've taken, you can go back and put it on film. There's still some really good things. Offensively, I've said it a bunch of times, and I'll say it again. You just haven't really had that payoff that you wanted, that you thought you would have with Dylan Gabriel at the helm, going into this offense that he knows like the back of his hand. It just hasn't been there. There's some things that are still, there's some kinks that need to be worked out, right? So with that being said, it's just back to the drawing board. At this point, you kind of got to lower your expectations, kind of like PG was saying. You just want to see improvement each game. And I think that's probably the most disappointing aspect of the Baylor game is that you didn't see that improvement that you thought that they were making. They were trending in somewhat of the right direction, and then they just regressed, right? So how do you come out against a pass-happy West Virginia, right? To be honest with you, with these last 3 games, the game that really scares me the most is honestly that Texas Tech game, just because of their passing threat. That new quarterback, not the other quarterback, but that new quarterback is slinging the rock around. I mean, if you go back and watch his game against Oklahoma State, he did some damn good things. Go and watch his game against TCU. Does some damn good things, and he can sling that rock around. So it's a passing attack right now. Our pass defense is just not good, and nobody's scared of us. And then in the trenches, we just can't get a pass rush, But offensively, I don't know. it's a lot of, it's just a lack of depth, lack of talent in certain areas. We're sold up on some areas. Some areas is like, hey, we're really good, and in other areas you're just like, we just had one or two guys there, we'd be all right, you know. And I mean, let's think about it. On defense, you know, a good defensive line, a good pass rush really covers up a lot of the mess ups on the back end. And we just haven't had that this year, you know. Ty, I think I said it to you off camera. When I came to a realization that, like, you know, maybe the season really is not going to go the way we want, is whenever I saw that 3-3-5. What teams usually run a 3-3-5? Now, granted, Iowa State statistically is one of the better teams in the Big 12 as a defensive team, but when you look at it, those are for teams who don't have the talent that you would expect to be at an OU, at a Bama, right? It's a look.
Or at the very least, you need to, if you're going to run a 3-3-5 and you're going to be an OU, you've got to have the right personnel. It is a very personnel reliant scheme, and if you can do it, you'll be fine.
No, you have to have that dude at the head up or the nose position that's going to clog up the middle, and we don't have that guy yet. You got to have guys that are fast, that can tackle in space. We don't have those guys right now. You know,
I prefer a 4-2-5. Yeah, that's that, and I've been very forthright. If you're asking me, I'm not willing to say. I just grew up during the age of hard-nosed running football, right? Like everybody here did, right? And so because of that, I'm biased to the 4-2-5. I'm just so uncomfortable pulling any way away from that line of scrimmage when I've seen teams just run it down your throat. And I digress. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that I feel like that was telling, right? Yeah. As far as kind of what we're dealing with here. You know, one thing that the whole roster turnover, that is a big thing that I'll be honest with you. I'll be the first one to admit I overlooked that. I glossed over that. My bad, people. You know, I was watching Danny Stutzman on, the podcast on the Prairie with Braden Willis and Jeremiah Hall, and he said something that stood out to me. If I took one thing from that interview, it was this right here. Venables saw him in the locker room or wherever they was at before the Oregon game. I mean, after the Oregon game, was like, hey, man, you didn't really play a lot in the Oregon game. You're a really talented player. I could tell you don't watch a lot of film. I could tell you don't do this. I can tell you don't do that. The attention, to detail, the amount of attention to detail that they have to have for a defense like this, I don't necessarily know if our guys are seasoned for that. And that's not even a diss to Lincoln Riley. That's just being honest when it comes to this new coaching staff with how much they put on you in this defense.
Yep. And if you've been around Brent Venables for any significant amount of time and you understand what he demands out of you, he demands just what you were talking about, Chris. Attention to detail. Be where your feet are right there, okay? Don't think about anything else in the moment. You have to study your butt off. You have to get ready. And Teddy has mentioned this, I don't know how many times, because Teddy understands it. Teddy has played in that defense. He knows. Yeah, and these guys are still getting used to that type of mentality, you know, because it's been so laxed for so many years on that side of the football.
PG, what are you thinking, man?
I'm just sitting here and thinking all of it. Because, I mean, what can I say that can't be said already? And we hear all the stuff about how BV's not it, OU's out, they're not going to win any more games. I mean, it's just all talk. We should have listened to BV when he first came here and told Joe, give me 3 years. Give me 3 years to win a national championship. That should have been pretty telling that the first 2 years probably were going to be pretty rough, or at least the first year was going to be pretty rough. So, I mean, what else can you say? And the dog's over here squeaking something in my ear. But, I mean, what else can you say? I mean, I don't think I can say anything else.
Yeah, Frightening says any 3-3-5 or 4-3 or 3-4 scheme is essentially a 4-2-5 if you have a player who can play multiple positions. But this is the point, if, and that is a big if, because it's not as flexible as like a 4-2-5 nickel. Right? Like your 4-2-5 nickel, that's got to be a flexible guy. Look at what Nick Saban does with his 4-2-5 nickels. I mean, they are supremely gifted guys. Your 3-3-5 dudes, they have got to be
We don't have any Isaiah Simmons on our defense yet. We don't. You know, we don't have that type of guy who's just he can guard the slot. He can go play linebacker. He can play safety. He can roll down and hit you. We don't have that dude yet. And that's not a knock on any of our guys in there because, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, they're playing hard. They're trying. Nobody is questioning their effort and their, you know, but it's one of those things where it comes down to, you could scheme up the best stuff. You could have your whole offense, and me being an offensive guy, I could draw up the best freaking plays in the world. But if you have guys out there that cannot go and execute what you're trying to do, you have to dial it back. You know, you have to go vanilla. You have to go, like Chris was saying earlier, base. You know, you have to do a lot of this stuff. And I think a lot of people are not understanding why we're doing what we're doing right now with our defense, because – you know, it's just one of those things where you're going to have some growing pains, you know?
And if I may, there was a play. Chris, do you remember what game it was? PG, I know. Do you remember? Because you were actually in there. PG came in the it was me and Jay. We were in a StreamYard like this. We weren't streaming. We just were in here watching film.
Kansas State.
It was the Kansas State game, right?
Yeah.
Because I have someone who I can get all 22 from. And so we're in here watching the all 22 from the game. And I was breaking down to Jay and PG where the defensive struggles were predicating for Oklahoma. And I was saying, this is why I'm not surprised. Like, this is a big problem for y'all's defense, but I'm not surprised. It was a lot of struggle at the linebacker cheetah position with communication. Who has what guy, especially when y'all were lining up in the 3-3-5, because then the cheetah position, his importance goes from very important to, oh my Lord, he has got to know everything and everybody's got to be on the same page. That's not exactly a major concern in year one. Now, if we're in year 3 and Brent Venables has a cheetah that's been there for 3 years and we're still seeing these issues, hey, this same conversation, I'm all here for it. But right now, it is what it is. Gloria, I saw you say something earlier about Kirby, how he's the best in college football because of what he's been able to do. He's certainly up there. I would still put Nick because Nick is, you know, Nick. But there's no question as to the quality of Kirby. And this year, to your point, Gloria, only proves it further. Losing what he did to the NFL and then doing this, top 10 defense and top 10 offense, I mean, nothing really needs to be said more about it. Quality of job has been superb. Just absolutely superb.
And I go back to the development part, man.
Yes.
And the staff that he has hired at Georgia, I think they're just they don't toot their own horn. They don't do anything. They just go out there and they demand a lot out of their guys. And yeah, they recruit really well, but man, they can develop some dudes on defense.
Unbelievable.
And they've done it. Yep. It's been, you know, something that people are now starting to get used to, you know, is Georgia's going to have some dudes on the defensive side of the football that are going to come hit you in the mouth. So,
and I love this comment by Homer here. Like I told y'all earlier in the live stream, guys, Texas Homer, phenomenal Texas content, phenomenal college football content, takes the time to break down, give you schematic matchups and everything you need to know for any Texas game during the year. I mean, if you're not watching his previews, you need to start. And he makes an interesting point here. And there's a larger conversation to be had here, Homer. And I'm really glad you opened this up because it even gets us back to Oklahoma and really when Venables started taking the 3-3-5 to another level. I don't know the year off the top of my head. I forget. But Brent Venables actually went to Matt Campbell in Iowa State because they held a convention a few years ago there so that other defensive coordinators could learn more about the way Campbell runs his 3-3-5. A lot of defensive coordinators were present. Brent Venables was one of them, and he picked up some intricacies from how Campbell does it. So I love this comment by Homer saying that half the Big 12 plays the Iowa State defense because it's so true. So many defensive coordinators went to Campbell, to that Iowa State defense. For whatever reason, the Iowa State defensive coordinator's name escapes me right now, and it's infuriating me. And I don't know why, but what they have created up there is really, really unique. And hey, everybody here knows I've been down on the 3-3-5. Down's a harsh word. I just, you got to have the personnel. I think that's the best way to put it. Now, before we get out of here, there was more conversation that I told Nick we would have. I don't see the comment because there's been a lot of comments, but I do remember it, Nick. So if you're still in here, we need to talk about it. because it's going to be fun. He asked the comment, if TCU and Tennessee met up, who would win? They're not going to meet up, or I mean, unless they meet up in the bowl games, but let's just have the conversation. This is a fun one. And you want to know why, guys? I said it to Drew. I said it to PG last week. Whenever the playoff committee had their initial rankings, one of the things that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me is how they downed TCU for not playing defense. Tennessee has an amazing offense. Their pass defense ranks 127th in the nation. So I get it. They downed Bama. I think that game would be one of the most exciting games of the year if we saw it. Steve Sexton says TCU. Yeah, I mean, they've had some big games. I might have to give it to Tennessee. And the reason I'm going to give it to Tennessee is because I think they're so battle-tested this year. I love the veteran leadership they have. Now, that being said, you get that same argument at TCU with the veteran leadership. I just think that Tennessee, if we were able to take this team that has played in the games they've played in this year, they're so battle-tested. But let's not make a mistake. TCU would be in that game. Drew, I want to hear from you on this because this is a fun one in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun one. For me, it comes down to the quarterback play. And I think that I would trust Hendon Hooker with the ball in his hands with the last drive more than I would Max Duggan. But at the same time, you're talking about a defense, especially in the secondary and in Tennessee, that's given up a lot of yards. But at the end of the day, I'd probably go with Tennessee in this one, just because the simple fact that they've played a little bit more physical football. Yeah, they've not done so well, obviously, with the Georgia game, but I don't know how physical TCU could really get against a front, an SEC front like that. So my initial go would be to the Volunteers.
Yeah, Chris, what are you thinking?
Man, I would go Tennessee, to be quite frank with you. I think Tennessee would win. I think it would be a high-scoring game, but I think Tennessee would probably win by 10. I would say 41-31 game. I see TCU having success in different parts of the game, making it feel contested, coming out there. They're high energy. They throw the first blow. They get the first touchdown. But then I see Hendon Hooker kind of settling in and being just the guy out there, the best player on the field, and then Hyatt being able to get loose. Then I see some of those.
Don't say that name. I'm having flashbacks.
Then I see some of those other receivers kind of being able to get off as well, simply because of all the attention that's going to be placed on him. And if they can have a consistent and healthy running game, then they would be fine. But I think, like I said, TCU will make it a hell of a game. But I think
it's close.
Yeah, I think it's close. But I do think that Tennessee would probably get the nod from me, at least by 10.
PG, what you thinking?
Yeah, it's Tennessee. I don't really think there's much of a argument for TCU, just because I don't know who TCU's putting on Hendon Hooker to stop him.
So the debater in me is I can play devil's advocate for TCU to win this game fairly easily. And you want to know what
I know you can. TCU has taken out all of the Big 12 quarterbacks except for JT Daniels.
Well, but here's the thing. That's not at all where I was.
I know you can, because I'll make that same argument.
Is that going to be TCU's game plan?
Not at all where I was going with that.
Oh,
but
man.
I'm going to now inverse this. I'm going to play devil's advocate for TCU to get the victory, because I to Chris's point, it is that close. I talked to you earlier about Tennessee. They've been tested, and they have been one of the most tested teams in college football. But do you know what we have learned from all of those tests? Their passing defense is a straight up liability. Now, when I look at TCU, they have wide receiver after wide receiver after wide receiver. We talk about Hendon Hooker being a veteran quarterback. Duggan's a veteran presence as well. That's going to do them a lot of good. Essentially, you're talking about high-powered offense against high-powered offense. Now, the question then must be asked, what defense is better situated to stop what the other offense does well? At that point, you have a really, really, really tough conversation. Now, that being said, if you ask me, who do I think wins? I think it's Tennessee. But this is such a fun conversation because there is an argument for people saying, like Steve, he thought TCU would win. Frightening. He thought TCU would win. There's an argument there. There is no doubt about it. That's what makes that conversation so much fun.
Yeah,
guys,
I mean, Tennessee's got some good DBs, though, and their
They
leading
do.
tackler on their team is Trayvon Flowers. And then, you go down and you look at, 4 and 5, you've got McCall and McDonald up there. And, I think Tennessee has one of the best or better receiving cores in the country in Hyatt and McCoy.
Now, one thing, PG, I'll tell you, I don't know that it's exactly a good thing for your defensive back to be your leading tackler. I don't know that that's not necessarily something.
He plays maybe a cheetah. I don't know.
I don't know that that's what you want to have when you look at your defense, because that means they got past 7 guys to get to him.
Yeah. Or they play 9 guys in the box.
Yeah. Yeah. Which God no, because look, they can't stop the pass. They're not doing that. Yeah. We've been on here an hour and a half. I'm going to let everybody get going. Unless there is some topics y'all would like to hit on before we get out of here. Unless there's that. Go ahead, Drew.
I got one question. I put it in our chat. I don't know if you guys saw it. But right now, who would you take? And I want the comments too on this one. Are you taking Georgia or the field this year? Based on right now, what do you think? Is it Georgia or the field? I'll give it to you guys, and then love to see the comments.
I love Ohio State. I'm taking Georgia.
Oh no, I'm taking Ohio State.
Interesting. I'm not mad at the answer. I really like what Ohio State has. Not mad at that answer,
especially with Nolan Smith being out for the rest of the season. Ohio State,
big loss. But that Jalen Carter is that dude.
Yeah, but CJ Stroud and
no doubt, no argument.
And you would have to think Jackson Smith and Jigba would be back for a game.
Yeah, and not to mention they have Harrison Jr., then they have Travion. I mean, goodness gracious almighty.
Give them a month to get healthy.
My only problem with that is that now I know that was the first game of the season, but would Georgia take that Notre Dame tape, right, and really dissect that and really implement that? Because here's the thing, and here's the reason why PG and Jay, if you're listening, here's the reason why I had so much pushback on Tennessee, and I said this would be probably this would be the short-lived number 1 college football playoff ranking ever, simply because I think a lot of people forgot, Tennessee has played great football, they've done this, they've done that, but damn, it took everything they had to beat Alabama, and guess who got their hands on that tape? Guess who's been watching this team? Georgia. So you saw Georgia neutralize a lot of the things that they wanted to do. They did one thing that a lot of people have not been able to do with Hyatt, which was be physical. They were physical with him. They knocked him off his routes. He felt every hit. You saw him on the ground. I hope he's okay, all the rest of that, but you saw them be physical with him. And that's something that, go back to last year. They had a great wide receiver core. Hell, 2 of your wide receivers. I mean, you saw what happened. Garrett Wilson and Smith Njigba. But if you go up there, go watch the Penn State game. Penn State had every chance to beat them last year. Why? Because Penn State chose to be physical with their wide receivers. We're jamming. We're playing man. We're on their hips. We're going to be fast. We're going to be to the ball. If they catch it, we're gang tackling. We are hitting. They were physical with them. And then when you throw in this Notre Dame game, you saw how C.J. Stroud struggled with the too high safety look. You're wondering to yourself, why can't Georgia do the same thing? I just feel like Georgia's defense, I'm not going to say that they're not going to be as physical or whatever the case may be. They're going to have their advantages, and Ohio State's offense at the drop of the dime can be hot. It all depends on Ryan Day, to be honest with you. Ryan Day hasn't called some of his best games this season, to be quite frank with you.
Because I don't think he's needed to, though.
That's fair, PG. And I don't think that's conducive to overall success to try and be like, oh, well, it's reliant on who we play, but that is fair.
But you look at the game last week, he had to start doing, he had to figure something out. He had to really be methodical about his approach to coming back. Northwestern had every chance to win that game. I mean, let's just be real.
Y'all know how much respect I have for that staff, too. For Northwestern. I'm talking to the guys here about it.
Fitzgerald, great coach.
Love that staff.
Yeah, but the thing is I watched this Ohio State team this year, and I see them as a 2018, 2019 Oklahoma team with a really good defense. I mean, Ohio State's linebacking core.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I get the numbers wise, and they have those guys or whatnot. Like I said, I'm just not convinced. Let's be real. Okay. I see the comments. I know people are talking about the Big 12, but I will say this right here. SEC is number 1 conference right now. Big 12 is right there behind it. The Big 10 has been weak this year.
No,
Big
I
10
agree
has
with
been
you.
weak
Top to
this year.
bottom, I don't think there's a conversation there. The Big
Yeah.
12 has been so entertaining for I think the people that are down on the Big 12 are on the past misconceptions about the Big 12.
Yeah.
We need to understand that right now there's a revolution of offensive football occurring in college football, and a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of it started in the Big 12. So we have this misconception that the Big 12 doesn't play defense. Well, it didn't look like they were playing defense because that was the heart of the offensive revolution within college football. And now you look at some of these defensive ideologies that are happening within the Big 12, and it's brilliant stuff happening there. Brilliant coaching.
Yeah.
SEC is the SEC. I will argue that they're number one, and that's a debate, but I would easily put the Big 12 number 2 this year.
PG, I agree with you on a lot of things, but man, the same thing that you're saying, you could say it for Michigan. Michigan has looked great this year, and we all know they play the Big Ten schedule. Let's be real.
No, yeah, they look great. The only thing is I just think with the talent that Ohio State have, it's leaps and bounds better than Michigan. So yes, they're playing the Big Ten schedule.
Well,
and
we're
I
gonna
do
see
think the Big 12, and I do think the Big 12 is the second best conference right now, and I think it's been the second best conference for probably 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years. But I mean, when it comes down to like who's got the better talent and right here in terms of development of players, Ohio State's got it over Michigan. And Ohio State was almost there. Was it 2 years ago when they lost to Clemson, or was it last year?
I love eggnog, working man.
Yeah. I just think Ohio State is that team this year. I think this is their year to run the table.
It could be. It could be.
It could be. Look, it's not. It's a logical take. Go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, and I was going to say this, and for this whole year, I've said that Ohio State has been the most complete team. Last week, I'm like, man, you struggle against Northwestern, you do, but yeah, you're allowed to have those games. I get it, but for me to really solidify that point for me, and I may be backpedaling on it a little bit, but if you go out and you really dominate Michigan and you really dominate the rest of your schedule, then I'll feel a lot more better, a lot more, confident in that pick. But right now, you still got, a few more games for Ohio State. They're going to get their best test. Obviously, yes, they're going to have a chance to prove, their worth. And if they go undefeated, yes, they're going to be in the playoff, and then they're going to get their opportunity and really see how much Jim Knowles affects that defense, and him being there this year. Is he going to be worth that money? And he's going to get an opportunity to show that. And hopefully they're going to have their guys at full strength with Jackson Smith and Jigba and a couple other guys back. But the key is you've got to be able to get him back and get him into game situations, because there's a difference between being ready to play a game and being ready to play big games down the stretch. And I get he's a great athlete. He's all that, but he is not conditioned right now to go out and play a Georgia or somebody like that. And so hopefully he's back and he gets a couple games under his belt before the playoffs or before those big games come. So, hopefully Ohio State's ready to go and at full strength, and they'll get an opportunity at one of these big teams. And I'd love to see it.
I want to address some things right here. Dwayne, we're talking about this season specifically, that this season, the Big 12 has been a more competitive conference. And by extension, that's what we're gauging better, that it's been more competitive. The Big 12 has been more competitive, and by extension,
but
based
I
on
said
our analysis, better.
Well, and Hank 12 is probably better than the Big 10 for the past 3 or 4 years in just terms of the product of what they're putting out there. The Big 12 being able to go out there and be so competitive outside their conference, but also be really deep top to bottom in the Big 12.
Yeah, Hank, that is a good point. Obviously, there's teams that have struggled this year. He said UGA against Kent State. Sure, you're going to get one of those games here and there. Not everybody's going to blow out everybody every single week. It's hard to win in college football.
Very hard.
It's hard to win consistently in college football, and it's hard to do it by multiple touchdowns. And so, yeah, you're going to have one of those games, but as long as you come out with a W and being able to correct some things, it's always better than learning from a loss. So,
yeah, it's This has been such a great year. We have people saying the Pac-12 has had parity. Guys, Washington was one of my sleeper teams all year. Every time we come on here, I say something. You can ask Chris. Every time I say something about Washington, they're so much fun to watch. Utah, Kyle Whittingham, ton of respect for them. USC, look, what USC getting Lincoln Riley inevitably for college football, that was a good thing. We want USC in the pack to be good because it's good for college football. It's more entertaining. So this year has just been great, guys. That's going to do it for us this evening. I'm going to let each one of you let everybody know where they can find all of y'all's content. I'm just going to go straight down the line. We'll start with Drew, then Chris, then PG.
Our podcast is the Under Official Review podcast. Me and my buddy Zach Merrill, we do it like a college game day type of format. We go across the country. We talk about all the big games, stuff like that. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then our YouTube page. Just search us and you'll find us. And we try to do 1 or 2 videos a week. And we just have fun talking college football.
Hey, you guys can find me at the Horns Down Pod on Twitter. Chris with a K on Twitter as well. You guys can find us at the Horns Down Podcast on YouTube and also on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at. Definitely check us out. We got some great content. That's it.
And they like your tie, Chris.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. Go ahead, PG.
Yeah, y'all can find me on YouTube, Apple, Google, or Spotify, just the PG Show, all one word. Or you guys can find me the PG Show _ on Twitter. We have a lot of good content, player interviews, and I'm going to be breaking down the 2024 potential class for Oklahoma. So y'all pull in, look at that video. Oh, for all y'all Texas fans, I got one finishing your guys' 2023 class too. So I want y'all to pull up too and tell me what you guys think of the Texas class.
Oh, it looks like it's going to finish really strong.
Let me plug one thing. On Thursday, I'm going to have PG on. I'm going to see if some other people want to come on as well. We're going to do a video call that I'm going to call The Honest Truth About OU. And we're going to just talk about this year, kind of what happened as far as the aftermath going through this year and just today to current. Yeah. So definitely on Thursday, guys, we'll be going live. Tune in for that one. It's going to be a good conversation because we're just going to let it all out and just see what the hell is going on and why have we what really happened and where did we make the mistake early on.
Yeah, it's going to be great, man. Really excited for that. And everybody here, tires a real hit this evening, Chris. Tires are real. You might want to think about just keeping that get up on all the time. I mean,
man. I was just trying to jump on the show, man. Just talk a little bit. I missed the last week's show, so I was like, I gotta jump on this.
Yeah, guys, thank you for everybody who is new to the show. We have Dwayne saying scrolling, decided to listen. Thank you for coming in. It's always a great time. This is pretty much what we do, man. We just talk football. Working. Thank you for coming in. Frightening. That's up to them. That's an issue you got to take up with them. I have no dog in this fight. And Faith asks, when does the stream start? 5:30 Central Standard Time. Mondays, we recap the weekend we just saw. 5:30 Central Standard Time. Fridays, we preview the weekend's games. But thank you all for being here this evening. We'll see you Friday. And until then, that's it. Now we have the spinning wheel.